What's up, bikers? I'm Robert, and this is the B1KER Bar Podcast. Live stream. Still saying that because that's what I'm doing today. Anyways, today's episode is 159. So, man, that is crazy. I read this thing just recently where it said if you had over 100 episodes, you're in the top 1% of podcasts. So that's pretty sweet. And every time I swing by Apple Podcasts, you guys are writing some new reviews, and that's awesome. Anybody that has thought about it but hasn't done it yet, swing by over there and write a 5-star review. It somehow like intrigues the podcast algorithm and makes more people know about it. So that would be rad if you had time to do that. Otherwise, I appreciate all you, especially those of you on Patreon. I got a new Patreon just the other day, so I need to get off of this podcast and write them a letter and get that sticker pack sent out. So if you're interested in helping support the channel, it would be great if you did that, because this is totally grassroots. It's just me. I'm not, some big sponsored guy, still working a regular job, and every little bit of support really helps this channel go further, as well as the biker channel as well. So really appreciate everybody over there. It means a lot every time I see somebody new pop up on there. So thank you all, and really, truly appreciate everybody on Patreon. Outside of that, you want something free, swing by Facebook or Instagram, or if you're watching this on YouTube, hit the subscribe button and the thumbs up and all those things, right? Trick that algorithm too while you're at it. Anyways, we'll go ahead and bring Thomas and Chris on from Freedom Coast and Better Bolts. How's it going, guys?
Hey, Robert, how are you?
Not bad, man. Just living the dream here, right? Fortunately, this week it's not like we're not so close to the sun as we were last week.
Yes, it's manageable now, right?
Yeah. So you guys are down in LA?
We're in Orange County, so Rancho Santa Margarita, specifically, kind of South Orange County.
So for people that aren't familiar with California, where is Orange County in comparison to like LA?
Orange County is just south of LA. It's basically sandwiched in between LA and San Diego counties.
Got it.
So it's right in the middle.
So like where Irvine is and stuff like that.
Yeah. We're about 15 minutes south of Irvine.
Right on. I used to have an office down there at a place that I worked at, and I would go, and I never got to ride, but I saw there were some like really cool trail systems like right by Irvine, but closer to the coast.
Yeah, we're kind of right in the middle of all that. So we're by the Luge, which is a popular trail. Laguna and Aliso are really popular. That's about 15 minutes from us. And then San Clemente's kind of popped up in the last couple of years. Another popular spot to ride is 15 minutes.
Yeah. And then you also, you get the ability to like pop over to Sedona pretty easily. And San Diego's got a lot of good riding too. I had a friend that would always talk about Noble Canyon down there being just super, super rad.
Yeah, definitely awesome. And industry-wise, like we're between a lot of motocross and cycling businesses are kind of centered here. So a lot of Shimano employees are in the area, a bunch of different big brands. Troy Lee's in the area. So it's a good place to be located.
How'd you guys get into riding?
I got into riding kind of coming over from motocross, was turning 17, 18, getting kind of sick of spending my weekend at the track, driving away from where we live to inland where it's hotter, and started getting into mountain biking and realizing all the trails and parks were starting to open up in our area, like Summit and Bear, and kind of got into it that way. So, how about you, Chris?
Yeah, I just grew up being a normal kid, riding BMX and, digging dirt jumps anywhere we could and being outside till it was dark out. And that's how I kind of got into biking. I didn't mountain bike again until I was about 20. And we moved to Aliso Viejo, and so I could ride my bike to the trail every day and kind of fell in love with it and just kind of really, I've always been interested in like the technical aspects of it. So I was always intrigued by how the industry was changing and the new products coming out and all that stuff. So that was kind of a cool sport for me because I got to go get exercise and push myself on a trail, but also like take the bike apart and do things like that. So.
Yeah, totally. It struck me when you said that, being a normal kid riding bike, and I was like, man, is that normal anymore?
Yeah, I don't think it is. I have 2 boys, and like they're just now starting to like actually go off and do what we did when we were kids, which was not tell our parents where we were or when we were coming home or anything. And so, yeah, it goes both ways, I guess,
Right.
There's a lot of distractions for them, but I think once you get them going outside and get them riding and get them interested in it, then the kids are awesome. I mean, we sponsor the Laguna Canyon Riders, and that's a bunch of, I think, junior high and high school age kids.
Yep.
And those kids ride almost every day.
Yeah.
And they get good really fast. And so it's fun to see. So
where we see like a lack of number of kids participating, the quality of the riding that's coming out of everywhere in the US, where they didn't have to learn all these things that we learned, or, they're riding with disc brakes to start or dropper posts. Even one of our employees is 22 and like, he's never ridden bikes when a dropper post didn't exist. And it's kind of mind blowing to us. So.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. He doesn't know the pain. That's awesome. Yeah. It's kind of a, in some aspects, totally different and probably less accessible or harder for kids to get into because they have so many other options. But then on the other hand, like the school programs and things of that nature are definitely a lot better than they used to be back in the day. So what's your background? What do you guys do before you started your own companies?
Yeah, so I started out of college working at the Enthusiast Network. So they owned Bike Mag, Canoe and Kayak, Surfing, and kind of got into the action sports industry that ways, but more on the helping them transition their revenue from print to digital. And I worked in the kind of like software side of things for them and monetizing the website. Worked in technology from there. And 4 years ago, kind of decided to jump into starting my own business and learned everything I could about kind of titanium and that side of things. I saw it on the motocross side. I saw some companies doing it really well there. Decided to start my own bike company 4 years ago, and kind of Better Bolts is what I landed on. And then I'll let Chris kind of share his background and how he got into starting this as well.
Yeah, so my background is a little bit more on the manufacturing side. I helped a friend of mine grow his machine shop from 3 machines to 26 machines. And I was the operations manager for that machine shop, managing day-to-day operations for that. And we were doing some pretty high-end aerospace and defense work. So that's kind of always been in my background. Like I said, I like to take the bikes apart and tinker and things like that. So while I was doing that, I always spent some time making stuff for myself, whether it was a stem or pedals or whatever it was. I always wanted to do something to just kind of make cool stuff for me and my friends. And so that kind of turned into Freedom Coast.
So Thomas started Better Bolts and Chris started Freedom Coast. And then somehow along you guys were pumping gas at the same place. And
like a year and a half ago, we connected through some mutual friends, and I was kind of hopping around different machine shops and getting things made. And Chris was making things and was needing to sell them on the internet and stand up the business side. So we kind of found this perfect partnership where Chris could take over the manufacturing and help out with bringing Better Bolts in-house. And then I could help out with, taking all the mistakes I learned starting Better Bolts as an e-commerce company and applying those directly into Freedom Coast. So it's kind of a perfect partnership. And we just, shook hands 50-50 and kind of started both businesses. And you'll see this Boost manufacturing logo on our shirts, then Better Bolts and Freedom Coast under it. So that's kind of the parent company that we started to house these 2 brands. Both brands operate underneath that. With all these machines and with Chris's aerospace experience, we decided that we needed to have kind of a parent company for if we want to run aerospace parts. We can't say, oh, we're this bike brand that's going to run aerospace parts for you. So that's where the Boost side of things comes in.
I see. Yeah, I was wondering where the distinction was with all the different names. So I wasn't sure if was there plans to make Freedom Coast and Better Bolts just one entity, but sounds like as it is separate.
Yeah, we're trying not to get stuck on names and things like that. I don't know if other people think about starting businesses or things like that, but it's always been in my head, and you always spend a year thinking about what the perfect name is. I know even when you did your interview with Push, right? He was like, it took him what did he say, a year or two to figure out to call it Push Industries. And so
Yeah.
I didn't want to get caught up on that. So I'm not really too concerned about what the names are.
Yeah.
But like Thomas said, like Thomas does everything. He's so good at everything that I don't want to do. And so it ends up being like this amazing thing where it's like, hey, here's a guy who's super talented on the computer and can handle all that stuff that is like last on my list. And then I can take some worries off of him and not have to have him worry about manufacturing or operations and things like that. So it kind of just all fell into place, to be honest.
Yeah. No, that's a good partnership. I mean, basically, I always I used to have an employee at another place that I worked at that him and I kind of worked in that same aspect where it was like he was the super techie guy and he could, read the manuals, and I'd get like a sentence into something like that and be like, I'm over it, and so it was really good to use people's strength where they're at. So, so what is it that you do at Better Bolts, and then we can go from there.
Yeah, so at Better Bolts, we manufacture titanium hardware. We have some aluminum pieces as well. We also manufacture a couple parts out of stainless steel as well, but main focus is titanium fasteners that replace the aluminum and steel fasteners on, that come OEM on a bike. And we started that 4 years ago, and it's just kind of, we've listened to our customers of what's happening in the industry, what bike bolts are failing, and we've produced those. So we have a big standard lineup. And then if you look at like Specialized, Santa Cruz, those brands, we offer basically every single bolt for one of those bikes. So working with Better Bolts, our customers reach out to us. They either shop our site using our filters. We're mainly direct to consumer. So it's kind of what I'm talking directly how our consumers interact with us. Or if they reach out to our support team, and we kind of know what goes on every bike. We get a lot of feedback from customers like, why don't you just have a kit on the site that's a Santa Cruz Bronson 4, X01 build? And the bolts can really change from bike to bike to bike, and it makes maintaining the website very difficult. So we kind of focus more on the customer service aspect of that. So we have an awesome staff here. We build out the package, send you an invoice, you pay, it ships the next day. So that's kind of how we interact direct to consumer. And then we also have an OE side of our business. Some brands run into issues where they need to order 10,000 of a bolt for new frame production, and 10,000 gets them to the cost that they need to run their business. That bolt fails. So some OE brands do reach out to us, and we supply OE hardware, whether it's when the bike comes and they don't want to deal with hardware. We have a lot of experience in that front, or it's they run into an issue. We can supply stuff in 2 to 3 weeks at a lower volume to kind of get them back on their feet and fulfill warranties or whatever that might be.
What made you decide? Because it sounded like you were like thinking about ideas of what kind of business you could start. Why were you like, yeah, bolts? That sounds good.
Yeah, I was actually I was on a trip in Whistler it was Trans World Motocross at the time, and Jeremy McGrath was on that trip, and we were talking about titanium bolts and sourcing them, and trying to find bolts was really difficult, and you could really only find like M5 and M6 bolts to do maybe your stem and your rotors and your calipers. And Jeremy mentioned that, oh, you guys used to steal all my bolts when I was on, factory Kawasaki or factory Honda. And all of a sudden, all my friends would have tie bolts on their bikes, and it was from my, race bikes. And so that kind of sparked an idea. And I, went home and went to some local machine shops where I live and started understanding what it takes, manufacturing on Swiss machines, reaching out to my contacts in the motocross industry and understanding materials. And it just seemed like, I'd gone to Sea Otter, I'd gone to Sedona Mountain Bike Fest. Nobody was focusing on bolts. There were a lot of wheel companies. There were a lot of bike rack companies, and but nobody really focusing on the thing that holds everything together. Also, I love taking things apart. When I would specifically buy Santa Cruz bikes, because you can really take those bikes apart a bunch of times and put them back together a bunch of times and leave them running really, really good. Where some of the other brands on the market, you pull a bolt out and you're not really sure if you ever want to do that again, because maybe it wasn't the right, bolt for that design, or it's just difficult to get back together. You feel like you're going to strip it. The materials aren't great. So I just saw kind of a need within the market for one company to focus on that.
What was the reason like that you would want a titanium bolt for people that maybe are just like, I don't really know why I would want to replace the bolts.
Yeah, so titanium has a similar strength to steel, but is much, much stronger than aluminum. So when we go through a bike, we can replace steel bolts and save half the weight. And then we can improve the quality of the bolts by changing out the aluminum to titanium to where it doesn't round out. So that was kind of the benefit that I saw was you still got the strength, you could reduce some weight, and you could improve the quality of the bolts. There's also some awesome color that you can add to your bike. And when you do a couple bolts on a bike, you're like, oh, wow, I didn't realize how bad all my other bolts looked. So we brought PVD coating in kind of from golf. It's a very popular coloring process. It's actually
what is it called?
It's called PVD.
So it's not like anodized then, or
it's not anodizing. So anodizing it can be good for small batches. So if you're just coating one frame or a couple fasteners, but in bulk, so many things can impact the color of the titanium. And so if we sell somebody a bolt, today and then sell them another bolt 6 months from now, the color could drastically change. Also, to achieve good colors, you need to etch the material. And etching, we noticed in our testing, was bringing down the quality of the material, making it porous at the surface. So we've just opted to not anodize titanium. There's other companies that do it. We just recommend that you ask them if it's etched or not and try to get titanium anodizing that's not etched. Our colors also don't fade in the sun, and they add strength to the product. There's another portion of using titanium where people are always concerned about galling. That PVD coating completely removes any galling. So we'll still sell. Galling? Galling is where the titanium will interact with the aluminum and corrode a little bit and bind up. So if you're using raw titanium on a frame, you want to use some type of grease or anti-seize. The PVD, we still recommend greasing your bolts or using anti-seize, or Loctite works as well to resist galling. But the titanium and PVD coating really solves for that. It's also consistent batch to batch to batch. So a gold bolt that we colored 4 years ago matches a gold bolt that we color next week, which is really nice.
What's different about that process than like anodizing?
Yeah, so anodizing, it's different than aluminum anodizing. For titanium anodizing, aluminum's more of a dye. Unless you're hard anodizing, then that is a coat. When it comes to titanium anodizing, you put electrolytes into the water, you charge the water to a certain voltage, and that's where you can put in a piece, change the voltage, and see it kind of change colors. The way they achieve like rainbow in that is they pull it out as they're changing the voltage. PVD actually hangs in a machine, and it sprays a thin coat onto the bolts, much thinner than like a powder coat or a Cerakote. It's 1 micron thick, so it doesn't impact threads, doesn't chip. But yeah, if you look at like some of our black bolts, you'll see one little wire mark where it's not colored. All the other colors, you can't really see it, but that's how we hang the bolts in the PVD fixturing.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So it doesn't chip though? You can't you can't scratch it off, or it's
it's on there really good. It's also used a lot in like high-end hotels for door handles and such. So kind of it's also like 6 times the cost of anodizing.
That's what I was guessing, because I was going to ask you, like, so why is not everybody doing that?
Yeah.
And you answered my question with what I was already kind of working out in my head.
Yeah, and the cost is mainly from labor. With anodizing, you can just dunk everything at once. With PVD, you have to individually hang each bolt on a wire, so there's different fixturing for that, and it's very time consuming with labor there.
How about you, Chris? Whenever you decided to jump ship out of the defense world, and why did you decide to start doing some bike stuff?
You know what, like once you start, I was like director of operations for this shop, right? And once you kind of see how everything works, like when you first when you're a kid and you get into a business and you start learning everything about it, you're seeing one side of it and you're like, oh, this is cool, we get to make stuff. And then you kind of put all the pictures or all the pieces together for the big picture. And I was always like, man, this is really cool. Like bars of material come in and F-35 fighter jet parts come out. Like it's a really cool thing to be a part of. But I always loved building the team. Like it was all about the guys that I worked with and not so much about like the actual machining of the part. was what I was passionate about. And so for me, I was always like, man, this could, once you see that whole piece, it's like, I want to make parts for myself. Like, I don't want to make parts for somebody else.
Yeah.
And so that was kind of the driving factor for me was, hey, I want to develop some things that I want to use and then go make them. And hopefully other people like what I'm doing. And so it was just kind of a side gig for a while. And eventually, people started hearing about it and orders started coming in and all that stuff. And it just kind of like organically happened. And it was just, word of mouth and friends telling friends. And, but I think that all boils down to, one of the things that me and Thomas had in common when we first met was quality had to be first. And I think that's evident in Better Bolts. We go through a lot of effort to make sure that our bolts are the best. And, whether that's the coating like you guys were talking about, or another example would be how we roll all of our threads. So there's different ways to make threads. You can cut threads or you can roll them. Rolling is it's a bigger investment because you need specific tooling for each thread size. So it's quite a big investment up front, but it creates a better product. A rolled thread has no sharp edges. It's consistent from part to part. And it makes a big difference if you actually held up two bolts side by side, you would see and you'd feel the difference too as you threaded them. So it gives us a stronger product, but that's a business decision that we made is, hey, we're going to spend money on this to do them the right way and to set us apart.
So people understand, I have a little bit of experience with thread just from printing stuff, and the tolerance in between the thread that you're going into and the thread that's on your bolt is like really small. What kind of space are we talking about?
It varies from different sizes of threads. The bigger the thread gets, the bigger the tolerance is, obviously. But we hold all of our threads to about plus or minus 2 thou.
Yeah.
And then there's some special cases where we're holding a couple tenths, and that's mainly for like a shoulder bolt or something like that, where it fits into somebody's frame. Yeah. And needs to be a specific size.
So when you say thou, is it thousandth of an inch? Or
thousandth of an inch. So it'd be 0.002. That's what we're holding.
Yeah. Just so people can kind of like put it together, because it's not something I ever even thought about before I started printing. And I was like, oh, I wanted something to screw into something, and then all of a sudden I'm like, what do you mean there's space in between? Like, and then like even if the end of that thread is like flat or pointed or rounded off or something like that. So it's really interesting to like kind of dive into that world a little bit. When you started Freedom Coast, what was your first product?
Our first product was the rack. You can see right there, there's one. So we have a rack that's a full bike rack, and it was me and an engineering buddy, and we wanted a better way to, our bikes were getting banged up and scratched and dinged, throwing it over the tailgate of the truck. And so we were like, I don't want to do this anymore. Our bikes now are so expensive, and I hate to have this really nice bike and all the damage from the bike is from transportation. And so we kind of just tinkered and we tore apart some other companies' racks and made like this ugly monster rack, and tested it for a while. And people would just come up to us at the trails and be like, hey, where did you get that? How did you make it? Can you make me one? And so that was kind of like the beginning where we were just like, man, why don't we do some cool machining like we do in aerospace with some really high-end processes and make this thing look good. And so
that's like a hitch rack that you made, or
no, it's not a hitch rack. We have plans. Can I say that? We have plans for a hitch rack, but it's kind of on the back burner right now. We're just trying to keep up and keep everyone happy with what we have right now. That was made for a truck bed. So we initially, my buddy had a Ford Raptor and I have an F-150, and we were like, man, it'd be great if we could just take this bike and throw it over the thing, and it sits almost like moto style in the back of the the back of the truck. And so that's what that was meant to be. As soon as we came out with it, all the Sprinter van guys kind of took it over.
Yeah.
And we realized immediately, like, oh wow, this is exactly what Sprinter guys need. So we have inside the Sprinter vans, they always use L-track in the floors and walls. L-track is just an extrusion with, I'm sure you've seen it. It just has like a bunch of holes in it, and you basically drop some.
Yeah, we sent you some.
Oh yeah. So that's L-track, and so
basically, though, for people that are listening, it's like a metal rail that has little round holes kind of drilled in it every so often. You can slide things into it and move them right and left, and then tighten it up. And it'll be exactly where you want it.
It's how the airplane seats are attached to the airplane as well.
Oh yeah,
and they can space it like, at 737 they want this much leg room or this much. They can move it back and forth, and that's kind of where we got.
Yeah. So L-track was originally a Boeing extrusion. And the patent has long since expired, and that's why everyone uses it. But we actually made the anchors that held the seats in the planes for Boeing, and they were, they're hardened steel. They're way more than what we would need for this product. So we made a version of that holds these things into L-track. And so we have a quick release system that just I think we sent you one where you just turn the knob and that thing tightens up on L-track, so you don't need any tools. There's no rattling. We solved a couple problems with that, with mounting those and just being able to pull them out whenever you're not using them. And the van guys love it. So
we both have camper shells on our truck, and we find ourselves just kind of leaving a bike back there all the time now. It's hidden in the camper shell. It's the front wheels off, which it's a bummer taking your front wheel off, but to have your bike secure and not having to pull it in and out of the house every time you go for a ride it's pretty awesome.
So basically what the system does is you have this L-track that you can mount to the floor of your van, or if you wanted to use this in the back of your pickup truck, then you take your wheel off, and essentially it's like another, like typical racks that people would be familiar with. You just mount it to that, like it's like your axle basically, and you put your axle through and then use your quick release and you're good to go, right?
Yeah. So you're talking about our fork mounts. And so the fork mount came after the rack. The rack.
Oh, okay. So the rack didn't use the fork mount system.
The rack actually uses the adjustable fork mount to mount it in the correct location. So as we were developing the rack, we were like, man, how are we going to mount this? And the truck situation is a little different. Every truck is unique. Some of them have crossbars, some of them don't. So we needed something that was adjustable and modular. And so that's where our adjustable fork mount came from. So the rack is actually mounted to an adjustable fork mount.
Got it.
But once we developed that fork mount, that became our most popular product.
Yeah, we went to an adventure van expo and basically went with like 500 of those things, and they were just gone. And it allows you, a lot of vans roll into our shop and they're like, okay, I just spent $200,000 on this van and my bikes don't fit. They're too tall, too short, too far to the left, too far to the right. So we're able to get them like almost fork to fork by making that adjustable fork mount. Kind of, you pull out 2 bolts, adjust it, rebolt it in, and you can put bikes really close to each other. So a lot of van people have been coming in. Where they've been struggling to fit one bike, we've put 4 into that space. So
yeah, I was trying just to like build a mental picture of what the different products look like for people that are listening. So the one that's the bike rack, that has kind of, are you taking your wheel off at that point and putting it in?
No. So the rack is made, think of the rack as if everyone has a 1-up hitch rack, right? So if you had only half of that, so you captured one tire, that's what our rack is. So you can take your bike and drop and throw it in the back of your truck and just clamp on the front tire.
Yeah, there was the
front or rear tire.
There was the Thule Instigator as well. So it's similar to that product, but CNC machined and much more.
I think explaining the 1-up, it's probably really that like paints a really good picture of how it works. Because obviously, like, you don't need to have your back tire fixed to the bed of your truck. You really just want your bike to like sit in there and
they're not
stay
going
in place.
Yeah,
right.
You can put your rear tire into the rack as well.
Yeah, either tire works.
You can capture front or rear. So that's a lot of the Sprinter vans have beds, so they have to fork mount. But for somebody that doesn't have a bed in their Sprinter and it's just open, they can put 4 of these in and not take wheels off and roll them in and cinch them down.
Right. So how does the bike rack then fit into the truck then? If you're like, how does it fix in there?
It depends on the truck.
Uh-huh.
Like, so F-150s all have some factory brackets
Mm-hmm.
that are about halfway up on the front bulkhead of the inside of your bed.
Yeah.
And so there's companies that make crossbars for that. Built Right Industries makes a crossbar. I believe
Mm-hmm.
Rocky Mounts makes some sort of a crossbar as well. And
Mm-hmm.
our mounts will mount into that crossbar,
Mm-hmm.
and it actually ends up being like the perfect height. There's other trucks that have similar solutions, like Tacomas and Tundras sometimes will have a crossbar in the front, which is a
Mm-hmm.
little high for our product. Ideally, you'd want it a little bit lower to the ground.
Mm-hmm.
But we're working on solutions for each application.
Mm-hmm.
But to be honest, like, we can't even keep them in stock because the van guys just buy them.
Yeah.
And where the truck guys were like, oh man, this thing's kind of expensive, the van guys are like,
We don't even care.
they're like, yeah, like, oh, give me 3, like, so
Yeah.
sorry, truck guys, but I
Yeah.
mean, we're both truck guys. But it's a tough thing to do. You kind of got to go where demand is. So
Yeah. I mean, obviously, especially where you're at right now in your business, it's like sell to the people that are buying them faster than I can make them, or cater to the people that aren't. so I can totally understand. So I would assume that at some point you would probably build your own crossbar kind of situation.
yeah, we
Like with
have
the Toyota thing, like right away in my head, I'm like, oh, I could just manufacture something that would bolt to that, but then put my fork mount lower, and then that would kind of put me in the spot where I want it to be.
Yeah, I mean, the easy solution is bolt some L-track to your bed. But
Yeah.
there's a lot of guys out there who would never drill a hole in their truck.
Yeah.
Yeah, so on our trucks, we just drilled riv nutted the inserts. They're threaded inserts. So if you take the L-track out, you just have, 6 threaded inserts across your bed. But
Nice.
yeah, so we kind of, that's how we did it in our personal trucks.
Yeah, it's actually, now that I have L-track in my truck, I'm like, man, I wouldn't even know what to do without all this L-track in here, because we literally mount everything to it.
Yeah.
We have those fridges.
Yeah, if we go off-roading, we're strapping stuff down to it, a toolbox or whatever it is, because there's so many accessories for L-track. Put loops on, throw a tie-down strap over. So yeah, having L-track in a truck bed's pretty awesome. We actually used a hashtag at one point that was like, "Be a man, drill your bed."
Yeah.
Get over that fear and just jump in.
Yeah, it's really interesting what you were saying about the damage on your bike just from throwing on the tailgate. And honestly, I have an F-150 as well, and that's the first time I've ever had a pickup truck. So like before, I always used some kind of hitch rack or roof rack on whatever my vehicle was. And at the end of the day, like once I've had a truck now, it's like, yeah, I'm never gonna not have a truck, because you realize like how useful it is, at least for my lifestyle. And man, shuttling or whatever, it's just like so easy just to like throw 6 bikes over the tailgate. But the bike that I've had now for the last couple of years, if you look at it, it's just like a lot of abuse from the vehicles, like you're saying, like my fork, all the anodizing is like rubbed off of the fork. And I actually made a biker koozie. It's like a slap koozie, but realistically, I didn't really ever use it for beer because I don't really care about koozies. But you can put those on your fork or like on your stanchion or on your frame when you're shuttling, and it keeps your frame and your stanchion from being scratched up. And so it's like, coming up with ways to try to keep the bike from being damaged. And even with that, it's still like, man, it is a lot of abuse. So I can see where the product really speaks to a lot of people in that way. But at the end of the day, the van life thing, it sounds like it's just everybody's into it, right?
Yeah, and the truck beds have been changing as well, making the tailgate pad less desirable, in my opinion. Like, 5-10 years ago, the truck beds were skinny, and the bikes actually fit pretty well on there. Now they're putting so much technology in the tailgate that it's getting wider and wider, and it's actually dents the tailgate as well. Like if you pull your pad off, you'll probably see little marks from the stanchions on your tailgate.
Yeah, and the F-150 is aluminum, right?
Yeah.
So my tailgate has a bunch of dings in it, even though I used a tailgate pad.
Yeah.
And, I'm not to say that like a scratch on your bike is the worst thing in the world, and that's not why I'm not saying we started a company so you didn't get scratches on your bike, but
Right.
but at the end of the day, like, I mean, I've scratched stanchions and things like that where now you have to go get that thing repaired because it leaks oil, and so you just want to protect your investment and the things that you like to do. So
yeah. I mean, good point about the tailgate. I know, like the new F-150, for example. I have an older one. Mine's a 2013, and the new style though, it's so thick in the middle. You really can't even throw a bike over it without like it just wobbling all over. Like you'd have to strap it to one of the other bikes to keep it from just bouncing everywhere.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Kind of a bummer. It's like one of those things where I'm like, are none of these guys at this truck company, like nobody rides bikes? Nobody in there was like, hey guys, this is fucked up. You know, like,
yeah, I know. They need some consultants to come in or something.
right. They're like, yeah, whatever.
But yeah, if like the old ones are so simple, right? Like your F-150 or the old like Gen, I don't know what it would be, Gen 2 Tacomas, where it's like a nice thin little tailgate that it's almost like it was made for a bike to be thrown over it.
Yeah. Yeah, you were talking about Santa Cruz earlier, and I just built a different bike that's not a Santa Cruz. I used to all the bikes I've had for a long time were Santa Cruz, and I swear Santa Cruz like designed their down tube just to fit perfectly in like in a tailgate pad, because I would never have to Velcro that thing. It would just like throw it over and just stay exactly where it is in this new bike.
Yeah, same here. I had a Bronson and it was the same thing. And
yeah,
I think Santa Cruz even came out with the little protector pad on the down tube.
Yeah, you pull that thing right on.
I think they were the they were the first ones to do that, to have that be factory, and yeah, it was perfect. And then they started changing trucks. So
yeah, right. And then they ruined it, right? But yeah, it's definitely interesting. I mean, you're starting to see that, you know, more and more bike companies are doing the same thing, you know, adding those parts, so just to try to protect it. So from the bike rack solution, then you decide to kind of get into some other space, like blinging out some levers and stuff, or did you do something else?
Yeah, like we said, you know, it all comes back to like making things that we want to use. And there's brands out there like Santa Cruz and some other brands that, you know, we love their product. They make a great product, but there's some things that we can do a little bit better. And Santa Cruz does really well with hardware. They probably have some of the best hardware in the industry. I think other bike companies could go look at Santa Cruz for inspiration on that. But there's some other things like brakes, for example. TRP, I think, makes probably the best brake out right now, for at least for like the enduro downhill space. But the lever wasn't perfect for all of us. And, you know, if you don't have large hands, or if you're not used to riding moto stuff, then the levers are kind of straight and far away. And so we saw an opportunity there where we made some levers and we brought that bite point in, you know, about 1/2 inch or 12 millimeters. And it kind of like transformed the brake into something that everybody could use.
Yeah, I just recently bought a pair of the DHRs, and the guy that at Spartan Rides, it's a shop that I like to use down in Arizona, they instantly was like, look, dude, you're gonna buy these brakes, but I tell you right now, you need these levers. And I was like, yeah, okay, sure, whatever, dude. And like, I'm spending enough money on this bike, like right now, it doesn't even matter, right? And then the next day I was at my local shop, and I walked in with something else that I was doing, and the guy in the shop's like, dude, this guy's bike just came in with these levers. You got to put your hands on them. And I was like, oh, what's this? And it was your levers. It was the same ones that my other buddy just tried to talk me into buying the day before. And as soon as I saw them and put my hand like on there, it was like, oh yeah, this makes sense. You know, like this totally like,
yeah, well, thank you.
Way better.
That means a lot, because it's not like we just like sketched out a brake lever and started making it. It took us quite a while to come up with like the exact shape and the exact, you know, even the length of, like, you change the length of a lever 1 millimeter and it feels like a huge difference. Yeah. So there's a lot of R&D that goes into this stuff. And, you we get emails all day long, like, hey, do Shimano, do Magura or whatever. And it's like, you guys, it takes, like, we're working on stuff, but it takes, if you do it right, it takes a year or years to properly develop a product like that.
Yeah, and that's what's really, I'm glad that you touched on that, because it was something I wanted to ask, was like, how do you even do that? Like, to me, I'm like, if I was going to make one, I'd be like, okay, I'm going to look at the other ones that I like and then try to make it different. Right. But like you said, you change something just so small and it could be garbage. Like, even the way that it engages, or like, I think what you guys nailed with that one that I'm using is like, the way my finger sits in there for one finger pull it's just like the perfect position. And as I'm pulling, it's not like some levers will, like, they'll feel perfect whenever you're like engaged, but maybe not when you're not engaged. And just like, it just really feels good all the way around. And I was really truly impressed with it. And to see it in person, like, the attention to detail on the machining, you could tell that it was like, oh wow, like, this is not like, hey, we came up with an idea, we sent to some factory in China and they like molded 1 billion of them for us. And like you could tell, like, this thing's like made precisely.
Yeah, it is. And thank you for those comments, because that makes us feel good, because we spent a lot of time, you only touch the bike in a couple locations, your feet, your butt, and your hands. And hopefully that's the only places you're touching the bike on a ride. And and so it's really important to have your hands, feel correctly. And TRP has a great product. One of our fears is that, like, TRP is like, oh, let's just change our lever and copy these guys. And well, this lever is not the only lever we're developing, and it's not the perfect lever for everyone. But it is kind of a sweet spot for most people. And, I hope TRP can see that having an aftermarket product for their product is a benefit to them. It's the same thing with better bolts. Like, there's probably people out there who get upset that we take bolts off their bikes and put different bolts on. But at the end of the day, we're making a product that is as good or better than the part that it's replacing.
And we do see some brands that understand that narrative. We always use Jeeps or Tacomas as the example. Like, people buy those cars because there's aftermarket products. But now there's been companies launching stems in the past year or so that have came to us and said, hey, will you just make a kit for our stem? Here's the specs. And we're like, and we've even said, yeah, we'll make it, and let's change this up by 2 millimeters or this up. So it's kind of cool to see that narrative changing, that it is good to have aftermarket stuff for your stuff. Also mentioning that making stuff to fit other people's product takes time as well. Like, we don't know the tolerances. We don't have the drawings. So that's another reason why kind of prototyping can take a while.
Yeah. I mean, like the levers, we buy a lot of sets of TRP brakes and see what their tolerances are, and see what the differences are, and see where our product needs to be to work with all of those, but still be the tightest fit.
So people understand that, just to like clarify a little bit there. If their tolerance isn't tight, like, you may make it perfect for one, but if their tolerance like has a lot of room to play, the other one, your product may be too big for, or the other one, your product may be too small for. So to kind of hit that sweet spot, that's a good, like, something I think that an average person wouldn't think of, that you would need to go out and buy like 20 of them to kind of get an idea what the average is, to like, till you could get to the point where it's not like you just go measure the one set you have on your handlebars and you're in business.
Yeah. That's a lesson we learned on the Better Bolt side. Then really quickly, when we were developing Freedom Coast, it was like, nope, go buy 10 sets. Let's get the tolerances. Let's write them all down and go from there. So, because we see it on the bolt side, like a shock bolt tolerance, we can send a bolt that's perfect tolerance to the one, and it doesn't even fit in another frame because there's paint in the way, or there's, that bearing had a bad tolerance. So
yeah, it's crazy. So I think, like, ultimately what you're doing in the scenario of the bolts and like the levers, for example, it's like there's a useful reason to do it, like, oh, you're saving weight, or this lever is better. And then there's the bling side of it where it's like, oh, I can do this in different colors. And I think at the end of the day, that's something that you would be able to offer that any manufacturer, they're just not going to want to mess with it. You know, like TRP is not going to want to carry, you know, extra stock for, you know, every lever that they have in 8 different colors or whatever it is. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Or just the stamped aluminum to CNC machined. Like that's a big difference and a big commitment. So
yeah,
I totally agree.
And then I'm sure like the cost for them as well, if they were to be manufacturing them, would really, it would change their manufacturing like cost for their product as well. Then, you know, then maybe they're not being able to be as competitive with some other company that's, I mean, at the end of the day, I would say that Shimano and SRAM is probably selling a lot more brakes than TRP, right?
Yeah, I would think so. I mean, they have all or most of the OEM contracts,
right?
And to be honest, like we had a SRAM lever, and it was great, but we couldn't, like, we sold out of it. And now with all the new SRAM stuff that just came out, we're developing a update to that lever, so it'll fit the old stuff and the new stuff. But yeah, SRAM's another one where, you know, you look at their lever is basically just a stamped piece of metal. Yeah. And it's almost meant to be a throwaway. Like if you crash, that thing's made to break.
Yeah.
So that it saves the rest of the brake system, right? So we can do things that they can't do because we're willing to take the time and effort to hold tighter tolerances and use different processes and things like that. And then the bling factor is just icing on the cake. Like if you can offer colors, people love to color match their stuff. I like the raw levers. Like our silver levers we hand buff them, and we don't coat them. And the reason why we do that is because if you crash and you scratch it, well, now you can just go buff it out and you have a brand new looking lever. So, that's kind of our philosophy there. But yeah, we're able to be pretty nimble as well. I think that's one of the exciting parts about making things for yourself and making everything in-house is that, you know, we had people be like, hey, like, can you add some grip to these levers? Or have you ever thought of putting dimples or serrations or anything like that in there? And so we added machining marks that act as a little bit of grip, or I don't know if it's grip or feel. Feel is probably a better word.
Yeah.
Because, but now that we have them, like we have a couple sets here that don't have them just from previous revisions of it. And we go to ride those and we're like, oh man, it's so much better. I'm so glad we listened to people and added some feel to these. And, you know, even going from ours to a stock SRAM lever or whatever, you're like, wow, like, you know, we did pretty good on these. So
yeah, no, I totally agree. I mean, even down to like the little laser etching logo that's on the lever, it's just a really nice touch to like really tie it together and be like, you look at it and you're like, wow, like this thing's pretty rad. And to be honest, when I first was thinking about it, I was like a little bit nervous about, I've never taken the levers off of my brake. I don't know what that means or what that's going to look like. And you guys had like a TikTok kind of video that was online. I watched it. Took way too long on the first one, and then the second one was like, all right, I'm done in like a minute. You know, it's like, but it was really easy process too. So I mean, it wasn't like you need to be super mechanically inclined, and you're not having to rebleed your brakes or anything like that. It's all, you know, just take a couple of bolts out, slide this new one in.
TRP did a great job of developing a really well thought out brake. And obviously they're really powerful too, and that's why people use them. But you know, they did a really good job with modulation, with power, with ease of install. I mean, they're really easy to maintenance. It's just a really good product, and so it made our job a little bit easier when we went to make some changes to the lever.
Yeah, and it's one part for us when you look at the SRAM side of things. We did make a lever in the past. The code R you could bolt it right in. But if you had code RSCs, which is typically what people are, wanting, if somebody has that brake, they're wanting to upgrade it more than if they have the R. They have the R, they're just kind of getting rid of that and maybe buying TRP. But there were some pressed elements to it. There were additional pieces. So just in the time for production, when we're working on the new SRAM lever now, it's like 6 pieces. And it comes, and it's going to be really easy to install. But just the putting that all together and getting all the drawings and machining 6 different parts, it's a lot.
Yeah. And you guys have your own machine shop that you're running for this, and
You can probably hear it in the background.
Yeah, I don't know if you can hear it screaming out there, but
so Better Bolts, we still outsource most of that machining, but Chris is helping us bring that all in-house to do right here. So then we're running around to different shops and coloring factories, and but yeah, that coloring machine's almost $1 million that we want to buy.
Lord.
But when you're paying 50, 60, 70 cents a bolt, it helps to bring it in-house.
Yeah. So what kind of machines do you guys use?
we have our mills are Brothers, which is they're really good machines. We make all of our products are aluminum, so it's a really fast machine that's kind of set up for the way that parts are programmed these days, which is a lot of high-speed dynamic milling. So you're going really fast. You're taking smaller cuts. So that's what we have here for those. And then for the Swiss stuff, for Better Bolts, we have a shop that we partner with right down the street, and they use Star machines.
Right on. So that's what you're using for the titanium side then?
Yeah,
So
correct. Yeah.
Next purchase on our list is
So we'll be bringing that stuff. We do some of the Better Bolt stuff in-house now, like the Fox top caps.
Yep.
And then we'll be bringing the rest of it in-house within the next year or so.
Yeah, those machines aren't cheap, that's for sure, man. So there's definitely I know a friend of mine, he ran Project 321 for a long time, and his machine's quite expensive. And the company I work for as well, they machine ROVs and all kinds of parts to do with that, and the stuff that we have in there is just ridiculously expensive. But so yeah, good times. So back to the Better Bolts. So when people come to your site, is it like you said that there's packages for certain bikes, or it's like you can kind of come in and like build your own cart? How does it work?
So you can hop on the site and kind of type in Fox. So say you kind of have a Fox set up on your bike, it's going to pull up a search for everything Fox, or you can use the filters there. So when you look at a Fox fork, we have the top caps, there's a little bolt that goes on top. We have the axle pinch bolt. So everything Fox is going to show up there, the transfer seat posts, little bolts that show up in there. So you kind of knock out that portion of your bike. Next, you'd move on to calipers, search caliper, use the filters, pick your caliper lengths. If you're unsure, there's a little chat feature. Hey, what size do I need for, a 220 rotor on a Fox, on a Fox 38? And our support staff will kind of respond with what size that is. Next, you can hop onto rotors or stem and all the common parts. People reach out to us. They're like, I have a Renthal stem. So we order a Renthal stem. We figure out what bolts. We throw it up on the website and add that as a product. So you can pretty easily hop through our site and not have to measure much. We also have a printable PDF where I worked with a graphic designer, and we got all the thread pitches on there so you can kind of hold them up. There are a lot of at the hardware store, you can buy these little gauges for figuring out your thread pitch, but cycling, the engineers in the cycling industry have picked bolts that don't always have, standards to them. Yeah. So an example is the fine thread pitch on an axle. You're not going to find at Home Depot, an M12 with a 1.0 thread pitch gauge to understand what that is. And so we do want to work on machining something that gives you all of those, but it's such a massive amount of SKUs at the moment. It can be difficult. So whenever we get pictures or, somebody's unsure and doesn't want to measure, our support staff's there to help. We ask for a couple specific photos and we can kind of build out a kit from there. So a lot of our business is, I want a custom kit. It goes into our ticketing system. We ask for specific photos. We send it out, invoice, ship the order, and we label everything on the packing slip of where it goes.
Right on. So then, like, if there's a bolt that, maybe some stems, they use the bolt that's threaded the whole way through, even though it doesn't need to be. But then some other stems use it where it's like the first quarter inch is not threaded and then it's threaded after that. Like, would you match that as far as like what each bike company did, or does it not really matter that like smooth spots there?
Yeah, our opinion is we like to match.
Mhm.
Just mainly because if we send you a bolt pack, you pull out a bolt, it's really nice to see that you're putting in the same bolt. It
Mhm.
also, kind of solves any, like, is this the right bolt? Is it not? People do ask
Mhm.
questions like that. So whenever we get a bolt or whenever we get enough requests for a bolt and it's a little bit custom, we will manufacture the bolt exactly like that. So we'll work on a drawing there and get that manufactured.
Right on. So, and then like you guys sent me a pack so I could see what your packaging looks like, and it's like a little like bolt kind of organizer thing with everything all separated out. And what else do you guys have in here?
Yeah, so I think we sent you some TRP pad retention pins. We sent you some rotor bolts, some caliper mounting bolts, titanium anti-seize, which is good to just put on the back of the heads. You have the black coated bolts, so it doesn't matter as much. But if you're in a harsh climate, it's good to have a little bit of lubricant on your bolts. We also work with a company called Vibratite. While Loctite brand is probably what everybody uses, Loctite 242,
Mm-hmm.
we've noticed that when you have a bunch of different greases and lubricants on something, whether it's the threads or the bolt that you're installing, sometimes 242 doesn't lock up completely.
Mm-hmm.
So this company Vibratite reached out to us and let us know that they had like an oil tolerable Loctite. So we started using that. So it works the same way as blue 242, but it'll still bind up if there's other lubricants present.
Yeah. So when anybody's buying any kind of like bolt kit, basically it comes in that same packaging.
That's actually an addition on the website. So
Mm-hmm.
otherwise we just send in like a little hang tag, but somebody can select send with bolt organizer and we send it that
Mm-hmm.
way. And then there's also an upsell opportunity for us where we say, hey, for $3 you can get anti-seize, for $4
Yeah.
you can get the Loctite that we recommend. So
Yeah, no, that's super. I mean, I think that's like, to me, I'm always really big on packaging, and I think that you really thought it through like that. Like, I don't know, for me, it seems like sometimes I use Loctite so infrequently that I have like 9 bottles because I can never find like the one that I had last time.
yeah.
Or the one that I did use the last time, maybe I didn't screw the lid on all the way, and now it's all dry. So like to be able to just be like, hey, I'm ordering these and check this box for a couple of bucks, I can get a couple, like all the things that I need.
Yeah.
I know I'm not
Yeah. So we've gone out and found, like, that's why he says working with Vibratite. Like, we've gone out and found like little tiny, what are they, 1 ounce or 1.5 ounce?
Yeah. And then we
bottles.
sell bigger ones too.
And so if you're going, like, it's enough to get you through your whole bike, but then you're done with it. And so it's the same thing with the anti-seize. We sell little tiny caps of it. And it's a couple dollars, but you get to install your bolts the right way. And that's kind of what we're all about, is, like we said, quality. And we figured out that we need to do a better job with education. And so that's our next endeavor, is kind of starting a YouTube where we can have some informational videos and show people the right way to install and take care of your bolts and your hardware. And these products kind of go hand in hand with that. We've also started offering some torque wrenches and some other tools like that. Just products that we think are really good, that are good products for you, like for anyone who owns a bike, really. And if you ever work on your bike, you want to have the right tools. There's nothing worse than not being able to get something off because you don't have the right tool. So yeah, that's kind of our next endeavor, is the education aspect of it.
Are you guys doing axles as well, or just like the bolts?
We have axles catted up. We have drawings. We have it's like the one more project. Our biggest thing is we always ask our question, like, ask ourselves the question, what does this add to the consumer, to our customer, and what value does it add to your bike? And I don't want to just make an axle because you can buy a purple or oil slick colored axle. Like that doesn't really add much value in my opinion. So we've been riding our own axles that we've machined for a little while now, and we're kind of weighing whether, like, you know, we keep making improvements, and it's the whole R&D process, like I was saying before. And so until we think that we have done something that's special enough to put our name on, we're just going to keep tweaking it.
Yeah. I think that there's probably something to improve there, you know, or where it's like, okay, like Santa Cruz, they have the axle that has the handle, and it's got kind of a real cool kind of like spring mechanism that you can turn the handle without turning the axle. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I think it's a DT Swiss made product, if I'm not.
Yeah. So it's like something like that, where that they actually took it and they're like, hey, let's make this a little better. And it's like, okay, well, could you do that and maybe shave some weight or something like that? But I think the other end of it, to me, that would be appealing, where you were like, oh, I just can't make it purple. But to me, it's like, I would prefer to have the same color purple on all the parts that I'm changing. And that's the problem, is whenever you get online, they are not. And
that's what's
even
nice with our side of things is like Better Bolts and Freedom Coast use the same anodizer for our aluminum products. So like our Fox top caps, they match the purple levers on the Freedom Coast side of things.
Yeah, and so like that kind of stuff to me is where there's value in that in itself. You know, even you know, we were talking about TRP. When I bought the TRP brakes, I bought the silver, what I thought was silver. You know, you look at like 97% of the pictures online, it's silver. It looks like just brushed aluminum, like your handles. Yeah, and then I open the box and they're blue. Yeah. And I'm like, what the fuck? I got the wrong ones, you know? And I'm like, oh, this is not silver, you know? And I ended up going through the process where it was like, all right, well, I'm sending those back, because it doesn't like do what I wanted it to do, was like match certain other aspects of my bike. So that was also a thing that I liked. Whenever I saw your levers, I was like, all right, this is raw. It says right there, you know? So that's
we really try to not like edit our photos on our website and really show the true color. And if somebody's bummed with color, we're always willing to, you know, work with them on getting.
And some of that's just camera, man. Because I sent a picture to the shop that I bought them from and was like, dude, you guys ordered the wrong ones. And then I looked at my picture and I'm like, it looks silver in my picture. Like, you can't even tell.
Yeah.
Chris comes from the photo world, and him and our employee actually bought something that, what does it do? It like takes the pixels on the computer screen and.
Oh no, we just we had to calibrate our screen so that the colors were correct. But it's hard. You put up some lights and put it on a white background, and it's, you know, you underexpose or overexpose a little bit, and it doesn't look right. Yeah. So we try to keep our website looking as true as possible. But if your screen is not calibrated correctly, it might look weird. Yeah. I mean, we get people all the time saying, hey, can you match Chris King gold, or can you match BergTech something or other, right? And it's like, I don't know. Yeah. Well, I mean, like, their colors change too. I mean, I think Chris King has like polished gold and matte gold. Yeah. And it's like, you know, there's companies out there that do a great job with their colors. And I think we do a good job with our colors, but it's always going to be like, anodizing is not a perfect process. And so whenever you try to match someone else's anodizer, it'll be close, maybe. But there's like, we've gone through like 4 different golds to find the gold that we like. I mean, the TRP gold is a weird gold too.
It's more,
it's like bronze. It's almost like a bronze, copper, I guess. But it's like a really bright gold, and it doesn't. Some golds are more yellow or orangey, and so there's a lot. Like, people don't realize, like, adding a color is a big deal.
So that's the thing to me, where I was saying there's a lot of value in you guys just making the products that I know would all match. So I had another company on a while ago that did some machining, and I expressed to them the same thing that I looked for on your site whenever I went there. I was like, oh, they have top caps. Cool. Those are colored. Oh, they have these bolts. Those are colored. but nobody makes seat post clamps that match the other stuff. Why is that?
Yeah, we've been kind of jumping into seat post clamps and just looking at, can we make it better? Like, we don't just want to make it colored. We want to also make it better. We think like Bike Yoke's doing a really good job of they have a product called the Squeezy that we think that's a great seat post. But yeah, colors, just an inventory thing. It's one thing sells out. Like the first time we ran levers, purple sold out instantly, and then we made a bunch more purple and they didn't move for a little bit. It's just so weird how colors come and go. But yeah, it's a big operational bandwidth to add a color. But yeah, seat post clamps are a great idea. I think we got to find a way to kind of improve on them.
Yeah, I think the thing that's catchy with those is like you really do have to pay attention to each brand with them, because you may maybe you get online and you find a seat post that's finally like the color that you want, right? And you order it and then you get it home, and the old seat post that was on your bike was like 5 millimeters longer. So now you have paint to this raw carbon to now your new seat post. So that to me would be like, that's the part where it's like you're adding that extra layer of like, hey, this is going to fit right on your Specialized bike or fit right on your Santa Cruz bike. And it's also going to be the right color as the other stuff that we sold you.
It's always smart to kind of look at the bike. And that's why with Better Bolts and with Freedom Coast, we have to get the product in hand to see, the silver. How does silver look against their silver? Or how does gold? If we just saw TRP makes a gold lever and we never got it in hand, it's very copper. So if we would have made gold levers, they probably wouldn't have sold it all unless they.
Yeah, that's actually the reason why we don't make gold levers.
Yeah,
is because their color is it's a weird color that we took the lever bodies to our anodizer and said, make this color, and he couldn't really do it.
Yeah, he's like, I don't know what they're doing over there.
So I mean, I think one day we'll eventually do gold, but like, to be honest, like our biggest problem is keeping up with demand. Mm-hmm. So every time we add a color, that's just more parts that we have to make. Mm-hmm. So like, for example, right now we have raw levers and we have black levers. Mm-hmm. And those are your choices because everything else is out of stock.
Yeah.
So they're on the machine right now, they're running, but like we do batches and cross your fingers that the batch doesn't sell out before the next ones come back in. So I mean that's our biggest thing that we're working on right now is ramping up production. Mm-hmm. So it's hard. It's a hard thing to do to grow a business from scratch and to keep everybody happy as well, because I can buy 10 machines, but then if nothing's running on them, we're losing money, and so we're trying to be we're both fairly conservative, and we're trying to be smart, and we're also trying to kind of see where this all leads us and grow our business in the way that can help the industry the best. Mm-hmm. So for us, like, and talking to you like this just kind of reiterates the fact that this is a really cool industry. Mm-hmm. And from both of us coming from different industries, man, this people really care in this industry, and it's from the people that you see on the trail every day to the people who work at these companies, and we have interaction with a bunch of bike brands now, and whether it's someone who just wants us to make some stuff for their bikes, or someone who's having warranty issues, or whatever it might be, everyone like just wants to make stuff better and mm-hmm. to work with cool people and to push the envelope a little bit. So that we're pretty excited about where we're sitting. But yeah, keeping everybody happy is one of the harder things to deal with every day.
So is your goal to like get more like jobs with the bigger companies and be selling them bolts, or is it to like lean more towards the customizing or helping out the average consumer, or is it kind of like a hybrid of the both?
I think our main goal is to keep pushing the industry, and is to keep making our products the best products that we can actually put out. Mm-hmm. And we love to work with everybody. We interact with customers on a daily basis, and we love it. and we have people that come in, the local people that just want to pick their bolts up and say hi and see what we're doing and check out the shop. We love that stuff. And we also work with, YT is 15 minutes away in San Clemente, and so we work with guys like that too. So we definitely have an OE side to our business as well as a direct-to-consumer side for both brands, actually. But, we're just here to make cool stuff. So if people want to work with us, then that's awesome. We love it. So
as far as your machine shop goes, are you guys running that for your own production and that's it? Or are you contracting some other stuff for other people as well?
No, just our own stuff at the moment.
We only make our own parts, and we always had it in the back of our minds, like, hey, we can subsidize with, we can do some aerospace stuff on the side and keep the money rolling in. But to be honest, we've found that if we put the effort into the products, people want them, and it's hard enough to keep up with that. So as of now, and hopefully forever, we're just making our own stuff.
How automated is the process for the Freedom Coast stuff? Is it, you're just loading it in and the machine's like changing tools and doing all the stuff on its own, or is it pretty manual?
Yeah, I mean, they're normal CNC machines. So we have some pretty cool fixturing that we've done. So we have basically the whole table is all laid out with different parts, and we have it laid out so that like one cycle will make a set of brake levers, and it'll also make a fork mount on one machine, so we can change between the two or run both at the same time for longer cycle times. We have not gotten into any robotics or anything like that yet for automation. I think that's one of our next steps probably, but right now we're so quick moving, and I don't want to ruin that.
Yeah.
So, once you set up something with a robot, you're that's what you're making for a while. And so for us, like, we were able to make a rev change to the levers immediately. And, we've made, I think, 3 different changes to our fork mounts now, like small changes, some things that you may or may not notice if you were a consumer. But continual improvement is something we say around here a lot, and we're able to do that in minutes instead of in months, weeks, or years. So
that's that Kaizen approach, right?
Yeah, we want to keep it that way. So it's definitely it's a fine balance between being able to make as many parts as you want and to still be flexible like that.
Yeah. So you were saying that the levers are CNC'd. Can you explain how a CNC machine works so people that maybe haven't seen one before? So I'm assuming that essentially you have a piece of raw metal that's like, what kind of dimensions that starts out?
Yeah. So I always forget that people don't know. I've been doing it for a while, so
totally.
But basically, the levers start as a aluminum block. I think it's 3/4 thick by 1.5 inches or so wide, and
it comes in a 12-foot.
Yeah, they come in 12-foot lengths, and we cut them to size, and I think the size is right around 6 inches, and it makes us 2 levers. 2 levers kind of sit like intertwined with each other,
like yin yang kind of.
Yeah, inside that block, and we machine around it, and then it gets flipped over, and we machine the other side, and then it also gets some side holes in it as well. And so the parts have an op 1, they have an op 2 where they get flipped over, and then they have an op 3 where they get the side holes, and then they come out as done parts. So
and then at that point you have somebody that's like deburring and kind of doing some finish work on them.
Yeah, so they come out of the machine, and while the next parts are running, those are checked for quality. So like the holes are checked with pins. There's a go and a no-go pin. The threads are checked with a thread gauge, and then there's other dimensions that we check. So we have a blueprint sitting in front of the machine, and the operator will be checking with some inspection equipment. And then as long as everything is smooth, then those parts will move along. And yeah, the holes will get deburred. We deburr almost the whole entire thing in the machine, but there's some inside holes that we need to deburr by hand. And then after that, they get the finish process, which is we tumble or we Scotch Brite or we polish and buff, depending on the color and the product. So,
what's a tumble? What's that? What's it like? A big old bucket you just roll
a
around?
tumbler is just like a big bathtub thing full of media, and they're like porcelain is what ours are, but you can get plastic or metal balls, or there's a bunch of different ways to do it. But it basically tumbles the parts in the around in there, and it removes all the burrs and then gives them a really uniform finish.
It's pretty cool to watch. Like, you know, not being from manufacturer on my end, coming in and learning all this from Chris, like I was like, oh, you should go film some of that stuff. And he threw it into the tumbler and pulled it back out and we put it a reel. I think it got like 18 million views.
Yeah.
It's like people like to watch the how it's made side of things. It's pretty awesome.
Yeah, 100%. And I think that's where you can have like draw some traffic to your products that way, because that stuff is interesting, you know, and I mean, it's why that show, isn't there a show on like History Channel or something like that? It's like How Things Are Made or something like that. It's like, that's a really popular show. It's been on for like a ton of seasons just because people like to see that stuff. And just like you, Thomas, I didn't work in any kind of manufacturing before the job that I'm at now. And, you know, to walk in and see a big hunk of metal that's 12 feet long, and then like you were saying as well, Chris, at the beginning, and then at the end of the process, seeing like, hey, here's, you know, all these brake levers that were made out of that. It's like really neat to like see that from raw to product, like kind of evolution right inside of your manufacturing facility.
Yeah, I think that laser etch is the final touch, just like, you know, a little American flag on there, and just really, really cool to hold a colored part that's laser etched.
Yeah, I think that I really like, I don't know why that like really jumped out to me the way that it did, but I can't like explain the reason. But when I saw that, I was like, wow. Like it did, I think to me, it just really showed that there was attention to detail, and that that like little bit of extra time was put in for that. For not like, there's not anything operational about that for you guys to go buy a like $40,000 laser or whatever, you know what I mean? Just to like inscribe some American flags on the side of your lever. Like there's not an operational reason, at least for that aspect, you know? And to me,
we just wanted it to look cool. That's, I mean, that's the main thing. Like for me, like buying a bike or whatever it is, like you have to like the way it looks.
Yeah.
I mean, if you love the way your bike looks, then you want to go ride it. And so, you know, and that's my main problem with like an e-bike, is like I don't like the way it looks. And not that I'm saying that e-bikes are bad or anything like that, but like there's bikes out there where I'm just like, man, like I love that thing. Like the hardtail back there, that pivot hardtail is just, you look at that bike and you want to go fast. You want to ride it. And so that's kind of the feeling we wanted to have with our levers. I mean, it doesn't even say our name on it. That's probably stupid from a branding standpoint, but
yeah, maybe yes, maybe no. You know what I mean? Because I was thinking about that same thing just earlier today with like rim companies. You know, like they have like these huge names all over, and a lot of times it's like I'll look at it and be like, okay, I'm gonna take this decal off, and maybe I'll put something else on there that says their name, but I'm gonna do it differently, or it's more discreet. And in my mind, I was like, man, if I had a company that I would try not to like plaster my name over everything, I would let my product speak for itself. And then, I mean, as you guys are you know, living proof, you can't keep the stuff on the shelf because it's something that people want. They don't really care about the name being all written all over it, you know?
Yeah, I guess there's two sides to that coin.
Yeah.
I mean, every bike company puts their name on the bike. So,
yeah,
I mean, yeah. And, you know, like I think Envy kind of built a brand around being like kind of loud. At least in the beginning, they were.
Yeah, the rims specifically.
They were like, you knew when someone had Envy rims.
Yeah, because they had 3 decals on it instead of 2.
Yeah. Even when they were going fast, you knew they were Envy rims. But but you know, they make a really good high end product as well. And I think now when you see Envy, there's a lot of like like just black decals,
Yeah.
you know, and you still know they're Envy, but it's not so in your face. So I think they've kind of adapted with the times on that one. Yeah, I don't know. We're not like branding gurus, you know. We're just guys out here trying to do cool stuff. So
and we sit there with the laser engraver. We look at the file, and the a couple employees we have, we kind of all decide, okay, it should be this big, it should be this small. We like this font, and let's go from there. If it's something we like, then hopefully it's something everybody likes. So.
Yeah, anything with the laser too, like if we were just talking about levers, for example, I mean, you could laser out some kind of cool design on the lever that just makes it stand out. That's not really like functionally changing anything. It's just makes it look different, you know. And I think at the end of the day, I think that's what like really speaks to a certain audience of people, is that they just want to individualize their bike, so that when they're on the trail and the other guy rolls up with the same Bronson, you know, the same color, not looking at like, oh, that's exactly like mine, you know. It's like something individualized, you know.
Yeah, we see that as a huge trend for sure.
Yeah, and not only that, but like there's I would say guys and girls, there's most of us like to tinker and to play around and to keep, you know, making improvements. And like the bolts, you don't have to spend $1,000 on bolts. You can spend $20, $40 and upgrade as you go. I mean, you know, anyone from a 14-year-old kid to a CEO of a company can go do that. And that's, you know, the levers are a little more, but there's a little bit more to that. And so like, it's cool. It's cool that we're able to bring all this stuff and give people options and make things their own, you know? So
it's interesting on the Better Bolt side of things. Like, it seems like that market of changing your bike and personalizing it is really big to the trail bike market, where people are always like, oh, you guys would crush it in tri or road or e-bikes. Like, we do well in those sectors, but we really, our bread and butter is trail bikes. And maybe it's because that's what we ride. But yeah, it's interesting. That market tends to really do a lot to personalize their bike.
Yeah, that's interesting. You know, when I think about it, like, I think if you think on like road bikes, for example, you'll see some people custom paint them, but you definitely don't notice people like switching out bolts or valve stems to be different colors and stuff. I wonder why that is. That's really strange now that I sit here and think about it.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah, it's a different crowd. It really is. Yeah. Like, I mean, and you know, we kind of ride everything around here, but you know, our trails are enduro or more like all mountain trails. But there's a huge tri market around us and road bike, and they're just a little different, you know. They wear Lycra and they shave their legs and don't put colors on their bikes. But there's a lot of advantages too. Like people, like those road guys are on their bike for 2, 3, 4 hours at a time, and they sweat all over everything. And so we see a lot of corrosion and a lot of rusting happen when bike companies just put, you know, crappy stainless hardware on there. And so guys they can save weight over stainless, which I know is a big deal for road guys, but just the corrosion issue is big also for those guys. So,
where did you come up with the name Freedom Coast from?
I don't know, to be honest. Like, I mean, we're really close to Laguna Beach. Our main trails are in Laguna Beach and in Aliso Viejo. And I kind of just wanted to embody that feeling of, like, I mean, we have ocean views when we're riding. And so I just wanted, you know, the freedom was kind of just like the freedom you feel when you're riding and the freedom to kind of do your own thing. And then I wanted the coast part of it because, I mean, like, we'll ride our bikes down to the ocean and go jump in the water and then ride back. Like, it's so the coastal aspect of it for us, like, that's kind of how we grew up and kind of the feeling I wanted to have for the company. Yeah,
totally. I'd ask Thomas the same question, but I feel like it's pretty self-explanatory.
It makes it hard to make other stuff though, but we can, like, Better Bolts can jump into so many different industries, which is awesome. You know, motorcycles, and there's, you know, people ask us for like bolts for their knives and things like that, RC cars. But yeah, when we kicked off the show, kind of talking about, like, why isn't it one company? Why are these different ones? Like Better Bolts does kind of pigeonhole us into that single making bolts and making them better. But yeah, that's why I got the idea.
Yeah. I think that, well, you can always rebrand, right?
But I don't like I said already, like I didn't want to spend forever worrying about the name. There's so many other things that you can than worry about. And I know there's people that get paid millions of dollars to figure out what the name should be and what the branding should be and all that. But at the end of the day, like it's just a word.
I run legal and accounting and all of our back end stuff. So an address change and a name change just like give me nightmares. So. No rebranding.
Yeah, it's interesting. I always like to ask how the names came about, and it's like sometimes it's like what you said, Chris. Like I have no idea. I think when I was talking about my buddy Jake from Project 321, I was like, "How'd you get that name?" And he was like, "I don't know. We needed to put something on the like application." Like, yeah, I think that sounds cool. Like so. Yeah, it's interesting. And sometimes people have a lot of story to it, but I think either way, it doesn't really matter. I think it's like I said a few minutes ago, if you're making products that are filling a void or better than what's out there on the market, like they'll speak for themselves. So the name of the company doesn't really matter. So
yeah, I figured as long as you can pronounce it and remember it, then it should be good to go, right? So
yeah, totally. So is there anything at Freedom Coast other than the racks and the levers that you're making over there that I maybe didn't catch whenever I was looking at the site? Or
geez, is there
L-Track?
Oh yeah, we supply L-Track now. So we work directly with a mill that makes that stuff for us. So we make sure that it's high quality, it's the right materials.
A little bit of a different manufacturing method where it'd be really hard to stand that up. We're kind of CNC and lathe based. That's extrusion, so they're kind of Chris can explain.
Yeah, they're basically jamming. They're jamming material at a high temperature through a die, and so that's what makes the material that shape. So that's not really something you can do on a smaller scale. But we found a really good L-Track manufacturer, and we work with them and then we put our hard anodizing on it, which makes it the same color as all of our other stuff. And it makes it really scratch resistant, corrosion resistant. And it looks really cool. It's like a dark gray color. It's kind of unique to that process. So the L-Track has been a good addition and it ties right in with the mounts. So yeah, right now we have 2 different mounts. And then we have the rack, and then we have the levers, and we have some stuff in development. I don't know how much I could or should talk about, but
just additional levers and some improvements on bike racking solutions in general.
Yeah, let's just say that.
Yeah. No, that's awesome.
Our SRAM lever will be really cool when it comes out.
Yeah.
So I know a lot of people have been asking. Probably at least one person a day asks, send an email or a DM or whatever about SRAM levers. Yes, they're coming. No, I don't know when.
Yeah. Then the rumor mill is that they're switching to mineral oil. So hopefully they don't change anything on you.
It's interesting. They didn't change a ton when it comes to the old codes versus the new ones, but they will make some changes that, we'll have to adapt to. The most recent one on the Better Bolt side was the transmission shift pod and how that connects. It's the exact, and I'm sure it'll cause some problems that we'll probably hear about in the near future. They took the bolt that you would mount Matchmaker with, which is a capped head. I believe it's M5 by 11 and there's an M5 by 9, depending on which Matchmaker setup you have. And it's got 0.8 thread. The new SRAM pod, I'm assuming because it kind of sticks out a little further and needed more engagement, they went down to a 0.5 thread pitch, I believe. But the bolt looks exactly the same. So I'm sure we'll see some customers, driving in the wrong thread pitch to there. We're releasing that bolt this week. We got SRAM transmission, reverse engineered that part, and are releasing it this week. So, but yeah, we just
I don't really like the mount with mine. It's like a single color that really only allows you to have the button kind of like in one orientation. So
yeah, the old one was so clean where it could mount, with TRPs, you could have just the TRP clamp, and then you could have the pod on there, whether it was your dropper or your shifter for axis,
Mm-hmm.
really, really cleanly done. So I'm sure that there's some companies creating, matchmaking type systems for transmission. But yeah, that pod kind of sits on its own bar and it's got a decent size angle to it. So
Yeah, I don't
that's
like
what we
the
wish we
angle.
could prototype and release sooner. Match a color, like you said.
Yeah.
Definitely a lot of room for production.
I think somebody said that there was another, like, I don't know if it's from SRAM or for somebody else, but it, like, where that bolt goes in the default one, like there's a hinge there instead, so you can
Yeah, I
swing
saw
the
that.
button.
A little adapter,
But
and
I,
you could bring it left and right, and it uses the same
yeah,
bolt. I just saw that from a customer sent us a photo and said, "I need a bolt for this." So
yeah.
yeah, I think it was SRAM that released that.
Oh, so it is from SRAM then. Okay,
I think so.
got it. Yeah, I was wondering because I was like, I don't know. I really wasn't sure if I was going to like that pod compared to the old lever because I like the old one, but
Once it's clamped to the bar, it feels much better. When we had it
yeah,
off the bike, we were like, "Wait, this is kind of hard to click." But once it's on
yeah,
the bike,
Yeah.
it really
The
it
buttons
works good.
feel good.
Yeah.
I think I like it.
yeah,
I was able to make it work. I'm a little worried how it sticks out, like it's gonna snap off. But
yeah.
yeah, I think they'll come up with something and figure it out. SRAM is pretty good about that.
So I had first ride on the brand new bike with all the brand new stuff, and of course I wiped out, right? Because that's how it goes. And one of the buttons came off. So
Oh, no.
yeah, so I think that they nailed it on like being able to like rebuild everything, but I also think that they came with a couple extra buttons. So
Okay.
apparently that must have been something that came up in the field testing, and they're like, let's just ship with a couple extra
Send a
buttons.
couple extra buttons.
Yeah.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, but I mean, to me, like that would be like one of those things where it's like little bling, like you could like because I was thinking, I was like, oh, I could print this thing in a different color, and then my buttons would be a different color or something like that.
Yeah, we have a 3D printer at the office, and it's we're popping out the Magura little circles that come on the brakes and changing the colors, and it's so fun to be able to kind of rapid prototype or just make custom things to your bike.
Yeah, or just custom things for your life in general. I've definitely I don't know. I put off buying a 3D printer for a long time, and once I did, it really I don't want to say like sounds so funny to say like it changed my life, but it really did. It's like so many different things that I'm like I can just dream up something and make it, and something that there's absolutely no reason anybody else would want to make,
Yeah, it's a pretty cool time we're living in right now. I mean, like we're at the point where we're like, oh, I wish we had some way to hold this, and we're just like, oh, we'll just we'll draw it and print it real quick. It's not a big deal.
Yeah.
And so really like it's changed our whole thinking, like our daily process of thinking is so different now because if we see a problem, we can just go fix it right away.
Yeah, we made some of our Ciander displays like 8 hours before we left. We were printing those out. So
right. But I mean, it's just like I think what it does is it makes people think like, or helps you think like a machinist would think. I think that Chris, you probably have had that way that you looked at things, historically because you were machining things, so you could look at something and be like, oh, I know how to like make something that would solve that problem. Now, whether or not like financially it would make sense to do that, like it maybe didn't make sense then, but now with like plastic, and it's like, oh, like for instance, I always would have my chapstick in my truck, and it gets super hot in California, and if it's laying on its side, all the chapstick like melts all over the place. But if it's standing up, however the hell that thing is, it won't leak out the bottom, right? So I like printed this little thing that fit in one of the little like change holders in my truck, so that I can drop the chapstick in and it just stands up all the time. It's like nobody else is gonna want that. But it was like took me like 10 minutes to like, just take a little measurement of the caliper, and now I'm like, oh, now my chapstick's not melted. So
yeah.
Yeah.
No, it's great. It's awesome. I mean, or just like organizing your daily life. Like we just have 3D printed, like our toolbox where we do all of our work on our bikes now just has 3D printed stuff all over it, because otherwise people just throw it wherever and it's not organized, and one guy uses it and the next guy can't find the tools, and so now it's it's pretty cool. And I think it's helping drive innovation in the whole industry as well, because you can literally have an idea and flush it out like within a day.
Yeah.
Hey, this is a good idea, or this is not a good idea. So I mean,
Right.
that's what we did with the fork mount, to be honest. I mean,
Mhm.
we went to one of these van expos and walked around with the rack on a Saturday, and half the people were like, this is awesome, and the other half were like, hey, I have my bed in my Sprinter van, I can't put my whole bike in, I have to use a fork mount. And so we literally went home and drew up and printed a fork mount that night, and came back to the show and said, hey, this is what we're going to do.
Mhm.
And it wasn't a final draft of the product, obviously, but
Right.
but it was, we were able to solve a problem in 24 hours, and that could have never happened a couple of years ago.
I think the prototyping end of it as well is like, you know, it's really easy. Like you said, let's just say you're printing, you know, your handles, your levers, whenever you're like prototyping there, it's because it's additive, like it doesn't matter what angle it is, or you're not really like burning metal material to try to like make one to hold to find out whether or not it's going to fit or look right or whatever. And
well, yeah, and it drastically speeds up the R&D process. I mean, we probably went through 20 iterations of that lever, and you know, you can draw it, print it, the next day you have it on a bike and can feel it, and nope, change this, you know. And so what takes, you know, 4 hours to print or whatever, used to be, okay, now I need to go reprogram the machine, I need to go reset it up, and the whole machine's down while you're doing that, so you're not making any parts on anything. And
yeah,
so it's just a totally different process now, and it's pretty amazing. We don't use a 3D printer for any products that we sell. We don't think they're quite there yet, at least most of them for this industry. But for development, it's a huge tool. Yeah.
I think that it'll get there though eventually. I mean, they're printing metal, you know, so they're printing like titanium and things of that nature. So
I think a little bit is still the look to us as well. Like we want to make something that looks really cool, and some of the 3D printed stuff look wise, it just looks a little rough around the edges, and but we see that improving in the near future.
Yeah, we saw Trick Stuff. Trick Stuff is 3D printing levers.
Yep.
Which, okay.
Yeah.
I mean, for me, like Trick Stuff was that was like right up our alley, like machined, high end braking system, and then you go throw a 3D printed lever on it. I don't know if I agree with that, but yeah, it's getting there. I'll say that it's getting there.
Yeah, I mean, it really could change the manufacturing process. Like once that, I'm assuming that stuff will get flushed out. You know what I mean? And eventually, who knows how long that takes? But at that point, you know, that additive kind of manufacturing instead of subtractive, like it just really opens up a lot of doors for different things that you can do, and just in crazy kind of ways. You know, like you could 3D print the inside of that lever with some kind of honeycomb design so that it's like 20% lighter than it was. You know what I mean? And do that all over the place and a bunch of parts, and then all of a sudden your bike's like a pound or 2 pounds lighter or something, you know?
Yeah, no, I think in the next 10 years, manufacturing is going to be insane what you're able to do. I mean, they already have machines that are CNC machines that are additive and cutting machines. So you can add layers and then come back and cut them, and then add more layers and cut. So
wow.
It's pretty cool to see you can make parts that you would have never been able to make before. So no, we're big on technology, and we love being a part of what's happening out there. It's just exciting for someone who makes stuff for a living. It's really exciting to see what's coming.
Yeah. What are you guys looking forward to in the future?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think for us, we just want to keep pushing the envelope, and I can't really give away too much, but
Yeah.
there's a reason why we're doing what we're doing. And, we have some pretty lofty goals. And so if you just kind of extrapolate the parts that we're making into bigger things, that's kind of where we're headed.
Mm-hmm.
So as far as, a shorter term thing, we just like working with people. We like working with people. We love working with these companies. There's a handful of bike brands that we've met some really cool people and get to work with, and we get to add something to their product. There's a lot of bike brands that are doing really cool stuff, made in the USA stuff now. And they're a little expensive and higher end, but I really think a lot of that manufacturing is coming back. And so what we're doing is giving us the opportunity to work with them. So we're really, really excited about that.
And then I think growing something kind of bigger than ourselves in our community. We support a lot of, youth riding in our community, trail advocacy, things like that. It's kind of a big goal of ours, is to kind of, hire riders and create kind of a riding community around our business.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. It's definitely, I think I agree with you about things coming back to America, and it's good to see, So
yeah, we're really following a lot of the brands that are doing that, because we're making parts. Here is like, if you're making a frame at one of these new carbon facilities in the area, why go source your hardware from overseas when we can fulfill that and suit that need? So
I think having a machine shop as like the base of like how your products are designed and or manufactured, like having that inside your own walls really opens up the doors for almost like any product that you can dream up. At least in my eyes, when I sit and think about it, it's like, oh, you could make different links, sort of like Cascade does, or you could make, pedals, or you could make all these different parts for a bike that are, not maybe the bike itself, but pretty much all the things that we strap onto it are all made out of metal, and a lot of those are, and so it's like, oh, you can make hubs, or you can, all kinds of different things, headsets or whatever. And so it definitely gives you the spot where it's like, to me, that would be exciting, because it's like, okay, whatever you can dream up, or like wherever you see a problem.
Yeah, there's definitely more products that we could make than we have time to make. So we don't need to go looking in other industries to find something to do. That's for sure.
Yeah, exactly.
And we have, the back half of our shop is a bike shop, really. So, and it's really cool to come in every day and see new bikes in here. And, we've had customer bikes, really cool customer bikes that are kind of like what you're saying, where they're all personalized, to like the new Crest lines, to the new Pivot Shuttle. What was that thing? Pivot Shuttle, all mountain thing.
Yeah, and then
that was a really cool new e-bike.
We have a Coors bike. It's
this is our
works all painted like Coors original. So it's funny to see cool bikes roll through it.
Yeah, and it gets you really excited, and you get to see like how people do things. And this guy put this with this, or and that's kind of how we are now. Like, we experiment with everything. Like my hardtail there, we're gonna do a video series on our hardtails, but it's like the new SRAM axis shifter with the old SRAM derailleur with XTR cassette with King Creek E-wings. So it's like this total like hodgepodge of parts, and it, it works awesome. Yeah. So it's really cool to like find different companies' strengths and weaknesses and kind of like work your way through that. And it's really exciting to be in here. And to be honest, like, we're kind of spoiled, because we buy product and make parts for that product. So we just have a ton of stuff here. And so we're able to do a lot of cool things and mess around and have our buddies try stuff. And it's just a really, really cool environment to come to every day. So,
well, since you guys will be working with titanium and you have a machine shop, I feel like the crank set, it's a good way to go.
Yeah, titanium cranks are pretty awesome. We both run the E-wings. We love those things. Like,
they don't make them in dub though. That's the thing, is like they don't have a dub now. So
yeah,
So if you want to use the
so they make a good bottom bracket too, though. So King Crank does a really good job. And that's a company that's pushing the envelope too. Like they have their e-bike cranks are 3D printed.
Yeah.
And so I'm really excited to see where they go and what they do next. They're doing a really good job. There's cranks are tough. I think that the whole e-bike thing, they're still working out how they're gonna do the cranks. There's been some crank failures and things like that, and so we're kind of just sitting back and seeing how it goes.
I don't know why I have a hard time wrapping my head around what's different there. Because the torque is coming still from your legs, right? Why is there a failure with the cranks that has to do with the e-bike?
Well, the e-bike doesn't use there's nothing that goes through it. It's basically the motor is in the middle. So you're bolting cranks onto the pieces that stick out of the motor.
Oh, like a spindle or something.
Yeah, it's basically So I think that's where most of the failures are coming from. Is
interesting.
Whether it's user error or install error, I don't know. But I think they need to come up with a little bit better way to secure those.
Yeah.
And so
you would think it would be like just a machine part that looks exactly like what your bottom bracket would look like, right?
Yeah, but a normal crank, you have I'm blanking on what you call it. Is it just
the tube that goes through now?
Yeah, you have to have a through spindle that's then sandwiched, so they're bolted, so they're being pushed together. And on the e-bike, you don't have that. You have each individual crank that's just being put on and then tightened. So
yeah, I guess I was thinking about the older cranks. Remember those where it kind of screwed in, the bottom bracket was all one piece, and then you kind of screwed into the both sides.
Yeah.
There's who knows? We're not solving any problems.
I don't want to talk about stuff that I'm not an expert on. So
yeah. No, I totally get it. I'm digressing. It doesn't matter.
No, you know what? You're right though. Cranks, there's huge opportunities. Even stems and bars. A lot of people make stems, a lot of people make bars, but I think that you should be using the same stem and bar.
Yeah.
It kind of makes sense to me that those two things should fit exactly together and be made for each other. So there's a ton of stuff out there that we want to do. It's just a matter of having the time to do it correctly.
Yeah.
And holding everything to our standards.
Yeah, if we can make it better, sometimes there's products that would be awesome to make, like a hub would be awesome to make. We think that Chris King and Industry 9 and Onyx are doing a really good job, and we haven't thought of anything to do better yet.
Yeah.
So,
well, we have, but we don't have the time for it.
Yeah.
I think I always try to give ideas to things that I really want to fix that I don't want to spend any time trying to figure out how to fix. So this is mine for you guys.
Yeah. So you push it all onto us.
Yeah, basically. And I just keep pushing it on to everybody I talk to until somebody maybe bites. I don't know. But I, with a passion, hate changing my seat on my bike. There is nothing about that 2-bolt system that almost every dropper or bike seat post uses that I like. And I just feel like it's so frustrating to take your seat on and off.
Yeah. Have you used the Axis seat post?
No, I haven't used that. There's a couple out there that have a side bolt kind of thing going on.
Yeah, this one's just one bolt going through. Better Bolt makes a replacement bolt as well. And then on the front, you have a T25 that can adjust your angle. But when it pulls apart, it sits up there nice, and it goes on. That dropper's so awesome. I think they kind of did a disservice naming it a reverb at first because there were issues with the first reverb. They should have released that seat post and ditched the reverb name because that thing is awesome. I know it's like $800, but it's a pretty nice
so I mean, if you could come out with a system that bolts on to maybe existing ones and just makes that whole thing better, that would be worth it for me.
Yeah, it's interesting. There's that company making one where the seat angle can change.
I saw that one.
Who brought in that dropper? And it had a really cool system.
Was it the one that could adjust the seat angle?
It was the system was cool because usually when you put the seat on there, you're fiddling with that part that holds it in, right? Well, this was all, you could put it all together before you put the seat on. And so it was a really cool dropper, and I feel bad because I'm blanking on what brand it was.
Yeah, basically that's what I'm after. I just want people to keep engineering seat design until they can make it much easier. So it sounds like there's a couple of people getting started, but it hasn't hit like 100% yet. So
The seat market's funny. It just seats in general, like everybody has a different seat, you know?
yeah.
It's you gotta find the one that works for you.
Yeah, it's definitely a personal preference because your buddy will be like, dude, this thing's awesome. And then you'll sit on it, you're like, that's like concrete.
Well, then the specialized women's seat took off for like male riders.
Oh yeah, that's what I have on all my bikes.
Everyone loves that thing. Yeah, it's super comfortable.
It's a good seat. I have that on there.
Yeah, I have that on all my bikes.
Yeah. They also make the high end one that's like it's almost like it's like a spider web or something, where really cool technology with, I assume, injection molding. Where it's like almost like see-through, but really comfortable seat.
But it's like crazy expensive. I've
seen
it.
$400 or $500 or something.
Yeah, I'm hoping stuff like that comes down because I've seen they're using that technology in other places as well. Like my kids play hockey, and the high end hockey helmets have that, where it's just like this web of padding on the inside, and it's the same thing. They're like $500, some ridiculous price. But
I would imagine because of the way that material is shaped, that it disperses energy in a really like unique way.
Yeah.
So that's probably
I'd like to see a mountain bike helmet made like that.
Yeah, I wouldn't doubt it that happens. You know, I think like you're gonna like what we were talking about with the different manufacturing that that's kind of coming to. I mean, who knows? Frames and everything could be printed that way. So.
Yeah, I mean, we're seeing different ways to machine frames at the moment. Like Ministry Cycles, I think, is doing a cool like CNC frame, and Nico Malali's doing some cool stuff with some frameworks. So it's cool to see all the different. And then walking around Sea Otter, like we met Newhouse Metals, they're 3D printing certain parts of their frame, kind of part linking it all together. So it was interesting. Were you at Sea Otter this year?
Yeah, I was. Yeah, it's pretty close to me, so I usually go every year.
That was our first time going as a brand, and we quickly realized that we need to spend no time in our booth, and we need to be out talking to people and have our employees run the booth. But yeah, it was pretty exhausting going from like B2B to B2C conversations back and forth. I'm sure it's crazy for you as well.
This year was just absolutely like nuts compared to the last few years. So it was definitely, there was a lot going on. I usually only go during the week, and I feel for anybody that was there on the weekend, because even during the week it was like pretty.
Yeah, it was a lot. We went home exhausted every night. It was just like fell into bed, and that was it.
Yeah.
We went and rode that pipeline trail and came back to the house and passed out every night. So
yeah, I totally believe it. Man, it's been 2 hours already.
Has it really? Wow. What this might be a good way to end it. Like, how do you feel about people that are saying that the bike industry is hurting or going into a recession or things like that? I keep seeing people talking about that in videos, and like you said, like that Sea Otter was like the exact opposite. I felt.
Maybe we're just new. Like we just keep having record month after record month, and we're just not seeing it.
I don't see it. I mean, I see bike sales. I get that, but that's kind of just because
I think that's what they're generally talking about. I think that, all these companies nobody had a crystal ball, right? So you're selling way more product than you can manufacture. So then and then also the manufacturer is not keeping up, right? So then you get in, you're like, hey, we're having record-breaking years. Let's make as many of these, widgets as we can. And then, but you don't have the crystal ball, because you don't know when, where's the peak of that wave at, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's what happened, is you had a lot of bike companies really put in huge orders, and then maybe the orders took so long, and then things opened back up, and some of those people that would have bought a bike 6 months ago aren't going to buy one now. And then boom, they're sitting on a bunch of product. But I think generally speaking, I think there's a lot of new riders that weren't riders before. And, that all those people that maybe did buy a bike in 2020, it's a 3-year-old bike now, and they're looking at upgrading. And so, I mean, definitely, I've sold a few bikes over the last few months, and I compared to selling one during COVID, where it was like, you could just throw any number out there and be like, holy shit, that stuck, and now it's like, okay, well, that bike took 3 months to sell to get like what I really wanted. But so I mean, I could see it in that aspect, but I don't think so. I would think that there's more buyers out there now than it was before. And I think in general with like, especially mountain biking, I just feel like it's really becoming more and more mainstream, that you're seeing, like, you see a truck commercial, it's got mountain bikes on it. You see, where 10 years ago you wouldn't see mountain bikes on pretty much any kind of commercial, unless it was like a Red Bull thing or something. You know what I mean? So I think that it's definitely you definitely see the market kind of changing in that aspect. You're seeing, states, cities building infrastructures just to bring mountain bikers in.
Yeah.
Like, you don't spend that kind of money if there's like a lull or it's like dying out, and that's just my perspective. And maybe I'm a little bit less pessimistic than, the bike company that's sitting on, all of last year's bikes that they can't get rid of, or something like that. But
yeah, no, I agree with you. I think you're spot on with that. And one thing that we see being a small brand is, like we were talking about, how quick we can react to stuff. The big brands unfortunately can't. When you're putting in orders for a year or two down the road, and the decision you made, the number you made is the number you made, and there's nothing you can do about it. So hey, that's just one more advantage to making stuff here. And so I think hopefully people are seeing that, like, hey, if we support American made or North American made products, that there's a big benefit down the road to that. So
no, I totally agree with you, man. I think it's good to see our stuff come back to the United States for a lot of reasons, not without trying to like go down the rabbit hole there too far. But I think one of the things that I noticed, during COVID was how volatile we were to other countries, decisions. And if that stuff's here in the US, then we don't have to worry about that. So to me, I think that's a plus, but I'm sure there's somebody out there arguing with me. But at the end of the day, it's just my opinion.
Yeah, we find a lot of fun in like building a team here, and it's just cool driving 8 minutes to work and having our team and our little bike set up on our local trails, and just kind of enjoy doing it here.
I think it's super rad, man. You build a company and you can see the effects of what that company does right in front of you by the people who come to work and like have food on their table because of that. And the products that you sell, that you go out and see like the people in your neighborhood using. And I think that to me is like, I feel like that's a super fulfilling thing, and that I'm stoked that you guys are doing that, man. So appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.
Well, thank you very much.
Yeah. Definitely appreciate you guys hanging out with me for 2 hours too, and talking about bolts and racks and all the other things that we talked about. Like, honestly, if anybody listening hasn't checked out betterbolts.com or freedomcoast.net, go check them out for sure. They also have the Instagram, the Facebook kind of stuff, and there's some YouTube presence in there. So if you're on YouTube and you're watching, go swing by, give them a subscribe, and they're going to be working on some new content, as what they said earlier. So keep an eye on that. I always like to ask people what YouTube channels they like to watch, just out of curiosity. Doesn't have to do anything with bikes, but sometimes you find some gems. What do you got, Thomas?
Yeah, I like the Seth's Bike Hacks. We watch like Mo and Hannah's stuff just because it's local. We have another guy in the area, Tommy Wynn. He owns like a local restaurant and goes and just absolutely sends it down some trails. So it's kind of fun to watch your trails like ridden in a different way. So those are kind of the ones I watch. And then whenever I want to learn something, like I'll hop on and watch some YouTube content that way. Go through like beginner courses from a couple different people and kind of get a good taste of how to jump into a new hobby or musical instrument or whatever that might be. Yeah,
100%. I mean, I totally learned how to use Autodesk Fusion that way. So
I really like the Fox Dialed series. That's a really cool series. To me, just watching them, I think like for most people, like I don't have like intricate knowledge of what to do when my fork feels a certain way or whatever. And it's really cool seeing people that are so good at what they do. and being able to help people. And I really like watching riders that are better than me. You know what I mean? Like, there's a lot of cool people who put out really good content, who are maybe like not the best rider, or maybe like similar to as a rider as me. And I really appreciate the people who are really good riders and still putting out the content and kind of helping to push the industry forward, and in a way. Like, that's kind of the new like TV show, right? Like, nobody watches TV, everyone watches this stuff. So like the guys like Remy and those guys who put out good content for us on a regular basis is really appreciated.
Yeah, and also at that, super top level as well. So it's definitely fun to watch. Well, I appreciate, man. I really do, having you guys on. It was super fun chatting. And like I said to everybody out there, go ahead and take a look at their websites, betterbolts.com and freedomcoast.net. And if you don't want to do any of that and you just want to get away with something for free, just remember, it only takes a bike to be a biker. Get out and be one.